there's any changes that are needed. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen now. It means I won't be able to see anybody or anything. So please do let me know if the situation changes or if I need to do anything differently. So hi, welcome to the session. Really pleased that those are able to join us, and hopefully we can share this recording too. So if you're listening to this after the event, welcome. My name is Heidi Knapton. I work for South Staffs Water. I look after the Universal Metering Programme, and I'm also a WUN advocate, and I've been part of that team for coming up to a couple of years now. Really passionate about this topic. We've got an amazing panel today, and I'll introduce those in a moment. And we're going to talk to you about all things working parents, whether you're one of those or you're an employer seeking to provide support. We've got it all covered for you. Just wanted to cover a couple of the wider Women and Utilities Network things. So we've got some amazing events coming up. This is obviously one of them, but we've got some more. So just some dates for your diary. For example, 4th of December, we are doing another one of our Speak Up campaigns, which supports in giving confidence and skills for people to speak up about inappropriate behaviour. Really key one for all to listen to. And we've
Heidi,
also got...
I'm not sorry to interrupt you. I'm not seeing your screen sharing.
Oh, okay. Thank you for flagging that.
That's okay.
Is it working now?
Yeah, I'm not seeing the slides. Yeah, seeing the slides now. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Thanks, Karen. No, thank you for doing so. Hopefully that's better now. Let me know if that happens again. We've also got some of our I Am Remarkable workshops coming up throughout December, January and February, which empower everyone to celebrate their achievements in the workplace and tackle some of those barriers around imposter syndrome, stereotypes, cultural barriers. So definitely one to tune into as well. We've got loads of events, so please visit our website and make sure you catch up on everything that's available. There's lots and lots of different things. And we also are really proud of our mentoring programme. We are so privileged to have over 180 fantastic mentors now within the programme. It has grown so much. So whether you're a mentor or a mentee, have a look on our website and feel free to sign up to that. It's a really growing movement we're super proud of. Podcasts, blogs, we've got everything. There's so many different topics, whether that's confidence, neurodiversity, which is a great one that Sarah Wilson's just done for us, or the technicalities of climate change, whatever it is, we've covered it. So please do check out the website for some of those. And another thing that we're super proud of is our development programme. So this is designed for women in leadership in the utility space, and it's been designed by exactly that audience also, which gives us a bit of a unique edge. Whatever point you're at in your career, please have a look at it, because there's been so much good feedback around that. So coming on to today's panel, really pleased to be here with some amazing people. We have got Letty Gordon-Furse, who is the CEO of the Springback Guide. Letty is fantastic and has supported a number of businesses. And she's going to talk to us about some of the stats associated with returning, and has coined the phrase returnity, which I think is very appropriate, and I absolutely love that. So thank you for being part of this, Letty. We've also got Charlotte Lack, who is Head of Safe and Well at E.ON. Safe to say E.ON have absolutely smashed it. They've won all the awards going, and they're absolutely the forefront of some of the stuff we're talking about today. And that's really clear to see when Charlotte speaks, and you'll see that for yourselves too. So welcome to the panel. And we've got Andrew Lobley as well, who's the Managing Director of Hydrosave and Advanced Engineering Solutions Limited, who's going to give us a bit of a dad's perspective and dad's thoughts on the working parent challenges. Andrew's also obviously a working parent, and I've worked for him myself and can absolutely vouch for the support and care that Andrew gives all of his teams. So we're hugely honoured to have him as part of the panel, sharing that perspective. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Letty, who's going to talk to us about returnity.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction, Heidi, and thanks to Helen, Karen, Heidi for organising this in the first place. It's such an exciting topic. I can't wait to get started on it. So I'm going to set a stopwatch because Heidi gave me very strict instructions to speak to 5 minutes only. And I'm a stickler for time. So let's rattle through these slides and get something really interesting out of it. So I just want to ask you guys some questions because I think it's a really good way to get our brains ticking. So you don't have to type it in the chat, but if you want to, by all means you can, or just make a little note yourself. But I just want to ask you guys some questions. So quick poll, and this is all around mums or birthing parents. What percentage of women do you think will change their working hours within 3 years of having children? And this is a percentage. Just take a guess, answer with your gut. Okay, moving on. What percentage of women do you think will quit the workforce entirely? And this is after their first child. Okay, and what percentage of women would like to keep working after having children? Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so some of these stats, pretty interesting. So 85% of women will change their working hours within 3 years of having children. So that is a lot. That is a lot for businesses to be handling with, but also for the actual people who are going through this themselves as employees. This is an absolutely huge logistical change, both for businesses and for employees as well. Anybody who's going through parenting and competing with the structural challenges of being a parent, like drop-offs and pickups, the fact that annual leave is consistently outweighed by school holidays. There are some really huge things that people are dealing with, which lends itself to this statistic. But I think the one that shocked me the most is the fact that is the next two statistics actually next to each other, which is that 20%, so 1 in 5, will quit the workforce entirely. So that's with no job to go to, they will leave their job. However, 98% of women polled say that they would like to keep doing paid work after they have children. So what is going on here? And I think this last but punchy one that I didn't cheekily ask you a question on is this 30% figure, which is just looking at how much childcare has increased as a cost since the 2010s. So this is really, really recent kind of crucial crossing point between the fact that the cost of living is going massively up, childcare is going massively up. You've got all these people who want to keep doing paid work after they have children, but they're just finding the structure incredibly difficult to make it work for them. So if we could just move on to the next slide. But let's do this for dads now and the non-birthing parents. And obviously, Andrew, I'm sure, will have his own opinion around this as well. I'd love to hear it. So what percentage of dads or non-birthing parents report anxiety and stress related to balancing family life? Okay, quick guess. How much more time do millennial dads spend with their children versus their own parents or boomers? So it might be twice as much or 3 times as much or half as much. Just take a guess. And finally, what percentage of dads or non-birthing parents say that they prioritize their children over their careers? Okay, great. So 40% of dads report work stress or anxiety related to not being able to balance work and childcare. Millennial dads do 3 times the amount of childcare compared to their own dads, which I thought was incredibly interesting. And the business case for maternity, and going into that some more on the following slide, will really be looking at why does this affect both genders and how is this popping out in workplace culture as well, because I think this is a really, really interesting point. And 62% say that they prioritize their children over their careers. Now, this last statistic, especially when it comes to the clients that I work with, so Springback works with E.ON, but also a multitude of other clients now. And this is particularly in the talent space from an attrition and retention point of view, which is that 93% of employees surveyed say that it is important or very important that prospective employers have supportive policies for new parents. So this is something that from a talent and culture point of view, people are concentrating on more and more. But what are the joint benefits of maternity? And I'm going to explain exactly what I mean by this principle of maternity. So maternity is basically the point of pregnancy or a partner's pregnancy, or indeed point of an adoptive placement or prospective adoptive placement, all the way to that person's return to work, probably about 6 months after they return, but sometimes it can be longer. This is who Springback supports, but why is it beneficial for society? Why is it beneficial for businesses and people as well? Enhanced financial stability is the really big one. So some of you here may have heard of something called the motherhood penalty, and this is specifically that women's earnings can take 10 years to recover after each child that they have. So this is a really, really enormous gap. We then talk about economic contribution. So the UK, as you may know, is in a bit of a productivity crisis. This is something that's really well documented. But The Guardian reported last year that in 2023, 240,000 women left the workforce, specifically citing childcare issues as a reason why they left. So if we think about the amount of productivity gains we could make if we made this work for working parents, but specifically working mums in this space, it would just have a huge impact. Then improve retirement planning. So you may have heard of something called the pension gap, but you may or may not know that it would take an extra 19 years for women to work before they could retire with the same amount of pension as men. Strengthen family dynamics. So there's actually some really interesting research saying that parents that have both, families that have both parents doing paid work have a much more likelihood of relationship longevity, so less divorce rates and more likely to have relationships last and be strengthened. And then impact of society on all caregivers being involved. So we know a lot of, especially with the news and things like adolescence and a lot of pop culture for young men, that actually the impact of children having involvement from both parents, so dad as well as mums, or indeed just both parents more generally, has an absolutely huge impact on the mental well-being of children in that family. And then last but not least, it's the superior health outcomes more generally, which is the physical and mental well-being of parents is supposed to be much higher if they get a proper chance to be able to balance work and home. Okay, so what are the 8 key maternity challenges? And then I'm going to pass over to Charlotte, who I think is speaking next. So what are the key things that really make it difficult for employees to go back to work and go back to work happily with confidence and resilience? So the first is that time changes everything. So AXA, who's a private healthcare insurer, says that irrespective of whether it's parenthood or not, the longer that people have off, the harder it can be for those people to come back. And that's not an argument to say that we should have shorter maternity leave. Absolutely not. It's just saying that those employees really badly need that extra support when they're coming back, whether it's via coaching or just support from their workplace. So that's really, really important. Often people think, oh, it's me that's changed, but actually time has elapsed. We all know from what's happened in the last year, Donald Trump, etc. A lot can happen in a year, and especially with AI and what it's changing now, it can change a lot. The second thing is financial pressure. So cost of childcare, as I said, it's a 30% increase in real time since the 2010s. It's just enormous. And then something called the mental load. So this is all of the emotional and well-being project management that goes with parenting. It's the buying of new school shoes. It's all of the nursery comms. It's who on earth is going to pick up the load during the Christmas holidays, summer holidays, etc. It's all of the planning and thinking that goes into parenthood, which research shows can take up as much as 2.5 full-time jobs. The uniqueness of families, so whether you have a child that has special educational needs or additional needs, or perhaps indeed if you're a single parent, this can make a really big impact, negative impact on that employee's ability to come back to work happily. The other thing is that discrimination still persists. So I love to see that kind of speak up initiative that you guys were talking about earlier. Unfortunately, discrimination still does exist. Last year, 67,000 women left the workforce specifically due to employment tribunals, due to maternity discrimination. So this is a very real issue. Psychological challenges. So anyone who's had a new baby who understands what it is to be sleep deprived, that can be really, really challenging for parents. Structural barriers, we talked about kind of drop-offs and pick-ups, school holidays, etc., can be really, really challenging for those parents to come back and come back strong. And then nest neglect, just to finish off, which is the fact that parents' nutrition, their exercise and physical health, their sleep, their time for themselves and their support can all really suffer. And we really need those to be strong as a foundation for resilience before those employees come back to work. So I'm going to stop talking. People can ask questions afterwards, but I'm going to move on to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Letty. Really insightful topics there, and very prominent for me as well. I've been back to work 7 months post maternity leave, so it all resonates really clearly with me. And I've just got a couple of really quick tips to share. And the first one is as simple as this, and someone told me this and it's really stuck with me and I think it works, is swapping the I've got to I get to. The mental load that Letty talked about is very real. I definitely feel it a lot of the time, but just reframing some of that and thinking of it differently has really helped. So I just wanted to share that top tip. Take up space. So returning from parental leave can knock your confidence. People think, oh, that person's back, but you're kind of a different version of yourself, or can be. Your priorities have changed, your health's changed, your routines have changed, your sleep patterns have changed, everything has changed. And I think having that confidence to take up space is really important. And what I mean by that is it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to be open about what has changed. So my advice here is to request that onboarding plan, and that can include a catch up on key projects, introductions to new people, a review of the changes, schedule those meetings with your line manager, network, reintegrate yourself. And if you're an employer listening to this that wants to know how you can support people who are returning from an absence, whether that be a week, 2 weeks, or a year or more, there's some of the things you can do proactively too. It's really important to make people feel comfortable when they're back. So that's my second top tip. And the third one is something that's really personal to me, actually, but a lot of people, and even on this call, will articulate really well that you can have it all. And you can, that's the bottom line. And it's the one thing people said to me constantly from the moment I shared I was pregnant to the moment that I'm back, and even today, oh, you can have it all. And you absolutely can, and we should celebrate it. But I want to remind people that it's okay if you also don't want to. And I think moving sideways, moving backwards, stopping entirely, these things should be normalized at any point in anybody's career. And I'm really open about this. I had to rewire my brain when I was on maternity leave because I'd spent my whole life thinking the career ladder was linear and that I had to climb it. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. And actually, having that time and space away from the workplace was really useful to help me rewire. And I'm really fortunate, actually, that the business that I work in has been really supportive of this and allowed me to explore that with them. And that was an amazing experience that I'm like so grateful for. But I think just having those conversations and doing what's right for you is fabulous. And this is a quote that one of my friends actually shared with me when I was sort of doing that rewiring process. And actually, doing some of those things that I'd always thought of as, oh, that's a step backwards or that's a side step or whatever, actually that feels like it can propel you forward. And I think we should celebrate that. And it's just something that's quite personal to me, but something that I like to share because yes, you can have it all, but you don't have to either. Let's not put that pressure on ourselves. The mental load is enough. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Andrew to talk about a dad's perspective.
Hi everybody, thanks Heidi. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all today. So I am Andrew, an MD of Hydrosave and AES, more importantly a dad, and less importantly a very average grassroots football coach for my son's football team. Just 3 or 4 points really from me, and then a bit of a shameless plug at the end. So I'm fortunate enough to be in a leadership position, and I'm also a dad, and those two, do conflict each other. I think for me, there's a piece around normalizing and celebrating and not feeling guilty when those career and home life don't perfectly fit in their little boxes, because they don't. They both sprawl out in all directions. Something I try to do is to not hide the fact that sometimes I am taking a bit of flex to allow those two challenges and opportunities to kind of cohabitate as well as they possibly can. This is probably a general kind of life thought for me, but certainly one that works here as well. Look, I'm an engineer. Steam engines do a great job, but we've moved away from them for a reason, because electric motors are better, more efficient, safer. I think challenging everything that we do is a very healthy thought process, and certainly works here. Why do we have things set up in the way that they do? Why is employment in the boxes that it is? And if we can challenge some of those norms and typical ways of delivering things to be the best employers that we can be for our working parents and carers, then we absolutely should. Again, in danger of preaching general life lessons, but I think for me, this one here, being human and ideally being a good human, those of us in managerial positions, we will have colleagues coming to us when, things are going wrong at home. They often come to us and they will talk to us about those things. Be your best self and actually put yourself in the position of, if that was me and I was having a conversation with my boss, how would I hope that they would react, and what can I possibly do to, make work one less thing for this person to worry about while they're going through whatever disaster of any size and shape that's coming at them. And this is one that I certainly have been surprised by. Actually, my son's 11. I'm a former ops director of a water company, which is a fairly all-consuming job. And he amazes me by just how much he knows about actually how to run a water company, just from the fact that he's been in the car with me with various conversations. And actually, worryingly perhaps for the sector, but he currently wants to be an engineer as a result of being exposed to kind of my career. I've loved that, and I will try and encourage that while giving him the opportunity to choose to do something else if he wants to. But I think don't be surprised just how much you inspire your kids by the example you give them. Last one from me. I did get a photo credit permission to share that picture of my son. He's less cute now, he's 11. But we have just formed our own working parents and carers network within South Staffs PLC. I've seen a couple of our committee members have joined. Thank you for your support. Shameless plug here, really. We are probably kind of like new parents in this. We've just started off. We're about to launch. We have no idea what we're doing, but we're convinced it's pretty important. I'm absolutely certain that there are a number of organizations and individuals who are, further down the track than we are with this. Please do reach out with good, bad, indifferent around if you were setting your working parents or carers networks up. Yeah, shameless plug. Please do get in touch and share any of those brilliant nuggets that you may have. I will happily copy with pride. Thanks all.
Andrew, and shameless plug, we can definitely respond with that. I'm hoping that Charlie Williams is on the call today. Charlie, please do reach out to Andrew, because it's great to collaborate on all things like this. So thanks everybody. She is happy to support. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, great to be here with you all this afternoon and to talk on such a very important topic close to my heart. So here at E.ON, we take a gender neutral approach to supporting working parents. So we want all our policies and packages of support to be inclusive for all colleagues. Today I'm going to share specifically about some of our recent successes we've had with the Working Dads the Employer Awards, together with some of the other initiatives that we have in place. So really pleased to say that we were double award winners back in 2023, and this was for the work we did around flexible working and our parenting policies. And again, we have been picked up 2 awards this year, a double one for flexible working and another one for leadership and culture. We're really proud sponsors of the great work that Elliot Ray does to support working dads. Elliot, of course, is the founder of Parenting Out Loud. If you don't already, it's definitely worth a follow on LinkedIn. And we're also really supportive of the amazing work that Anna Whitehouse does, who is founder of Mother Pucker. And I did say Pucker, who does lots of great work around promoting flexible working for working mums. So again, another good follow if you don't already. So we firmly believe that encouraging and supporting and enabling dads to be equal parents is essential to addressing the gender pay gap, the motherhood penalty, and achieving gender equality at home and at work. And I think that this is what the government attempted to do when they introduced shared parental leave back in December 2014, which is nearly 11 years ago now. But for me, the problem here was that they left it to businesses to decide whether or not to offer the statutory or an enhancement. And the other issue was that it was about having to share your leave. And I don't know about anybody else, but I wouldn't have wanted to have shared my maternity leave with anybody. So that was when at E.ON we decided we wanted to go further. And in January 2023, we introduced equal parent leave. And again, the key word here is equal. So what we did was we matched the maternity provision for both carers in terms of not just for the leave, but also time off for appointments, etc. And not only did this feel like the right thing to do and help us to remain an attractive employer for future colleagues, but we started to see positive changes towards those gender equality and those stereotypes. So, for example, when somebody returned from work, no longer was it a case of it always being the woman that you'd naturally assume would take the request for part-time hours, or when you were maybe considering assigning someone to a project that maybe encountered working away one night of the week. It wasn't just the women that were missing out on these opportunities. It was about having a more equal, balanced conversation to these things. What we also saw is that this had a huge impact on people's, sort of well-being and satisfaction. And at its really simplest level, we're a great believer that happy people equal productive people. And we've seen huge benefits of people that have taken this leave and the impact that it's had on their working lives. Just to share a couple of statistics with you. So since launching Equal Parent Leave back in January 2023, we've had over 380 colleagues who have taken up the benefit, which is phenomenal. And over 50% of colleagues have decided to take the full 18 weeks, which is really, really encouraging. And we've also seen that there's been a great balance of people taking that leave across all levels of hierarchy. So some of our senior leaders have taken that leave as well, which is fantastic. If I could just go to the next slide, please, Heidi. So just a couple of minutes on this, because I'm conscious that we want to get to hear from you. We also have, in addition to the support that I've mentioned, some great networks. So we've got our Working Families and Fertilities Network. Working Families was set up in March 2019. We've got about 600 members of that network. We're also affiliated with Working Families and really pleased to have made the top 30 family-friendly employer of the year. We also have a fertility network. Again, this was set up last year. We're affiliated with Fertility Matters at Work and really pleased to say that we've just won, only a couple of weeks ago, the Fertility Friendly Employer of the Year Awards. And of course, in addition to that, we also offer coaching. So we work with Letty and her organisation to provide that coaching. And you can see on the slide there, we've had an amazing response in terms of people scoring that service 10 out of 10 in terms of how that's supported and facilitated their return to work. And that's it from me.
Brill. Thank you very much. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Hopefully that's worked. So I'm hoping we've got a few more joiners. So I know we had some technical issues at the start. So I'm going to open it up to panel discussion now. So for all you lovely listeners, this is your chance. Either pop it in the chat if you want to put your hand up and ask your question. Please do. I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions at least, because it's such a big topic that affects so many people. And I'll direct it to the appropriate panelists. I'm just checking the chat to see if there's any questions in there so far. I had a question from one of my colleagues actually that I can start with whilst people are having a think and hopefully putting things in the chat. One of my colleagues was asking me yesterday, how can companies ensure that policies supporting working parents are actually used and not just written on paper? I didn't know whether you wanted to start us off, Charlotte, given some of your celebrations you've just called out there.
Oh, I thought I was on mute. So how do we ensure that they're used and not just something that's on paper was the question.
Yeah.
So I guess something we've worked really hard at E.ON is to simplify our policies. So back in the day, we would probably be guilty of having policies that were up to 10 pages long. And we realised that with long policies comes inconsistent application, and we want to make sure that people are having the same response to the support that's available, and it's not a lottery of where you work or what manager you get. So one of the things that we've done, and I'd really advocate, is move into a more principle-based approach to our policies and procedures. So for example, with flexible working, we introduced 10 principles about flexible working, and then really worked hard to kind of, communicate these across the business. We've embedded them into all of our upskills that we do. So whenever we're delivering any training to managers, we'll make sure that these feature as part of that. We'll embed them into all of our colleague journeys. So the maternity, the returnity journey, these principles will be there. So I think it's that simplification, education and getting them out there, and then just trying to embed them into all of your BAU processes.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really insightful. Letty, is there anything from your research and conversations you've had that sort of support some of that insight?
Yeah, I think it depends what support looks like at any particular organisation, but I think having, and sorry, it sounds really cheesy, but having kind of 360 approach to feedback with policies, which actually I think E.ON does really, really well just from working with them direct, which is that part of what we do is bring back when we give returnee coaching out and we partner with organisations to support their returners. I think a really key part of the service, and where I think we kind of differentiate ourselves a bit, is by making sure that we aggregate the feedback. So of course, anonymized, because a lot of what we discuss in those meetings is special category data. So that means physical and mental well-being. But what we can do is, for example, if there's a policy, and this certainly wouldn't be E.ON, but let's say I was coaching 20 employees or something, and 18 of them said, the flexible policy is great, but what it is in reality is not the same as it is on paper. Because I'm an independent contractor, I'm able to go back to that company and say, look, this is what people have fed back on. Here's what's working really well, but this is also something that you could really develop. Here is what your competitors are doing. Here's how we can benchmark you. And here are some really good suggestions that we can make as experts, because this is all we do all day. Whereas as a company and an HR team, you're balancing so many different needs across the people team. It can be really tricky to get every single policy right. So I'd say getting really, really good outside expertise that you trust to make sure that that's feeding into the policies. And I think something I've really noticed, again, from E.ON specifically, is working with companies where they're really open to that feedback and genuinely open, without just feeling like, oh, it's a tick box exercise, you know, oh, we've got coaching, great, tick the box. It's not that at all. And that's certainly not the relationship we have with E.ON, and of course our other clients as well. But it's just making sure that as a workplace, you're really open to the waves of change that hit society and sometimes businesses, it can just take us a wee while to catch up. But the more that we can be open-minded to some of these changes, the better, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think something else that I've noticed we do in our business quite well is our senior leaders sort of demonstrate these behaviours and almost normalise it. And I don't want to put Andrew on the spot here, but Andrew, I've seen you do that before, where you've been like, right, I'm going to pick my son up now. And you then support your teams to do that also. And I think when we model that behaviour, when I was certainly working in Andrew's team, I felt like, you know, I could do that because I was seeing him do it and it was normalised. And I think that gives great comfort in teams. Is that something you agree with, Andrew? So I've just described some of your stuff there, but I think it's really important.
No, I love it when people apologise for putting you on the spot and then put you on the spot. But no, absolutely fine. Yeah, look, I think we don't employ kind of professional robots who sit there for 40 hours a week. We employ the full person, and that full person has a load of skills which are way better than a robot, which is pretty relevant where we're going AI wise. But actually, they also then have life getting in the way sometimes. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't be able to be as much of a hands-on dad as I aspire to be, and I am, if it wasn't for the fact that from time to time I take a bit of flexibility. And personally, I think you give back more than you take because you feel grateful. Certainly been my experience kind of leading teams, and hopefully that, you know, works for all people who work with and for me ultimately.
Bro, thanks, Andrew. Really important. We've had a few bits come through in the chat, which is great. Paula Cunningham has asked if we can share the LinkedIn pages and confirm some of the names of the external people that we described. So we're absolutely doing that. I think Karen's on the case already, sharing some links. So yeah, we can share those. And then great question from Laura Tatum, actually. She was wondering about how hybrid working or remote models can be improved to better support parents rather than blur work-life boundaries. Is that something we've looked at E.ON, Charlotte? I'm assuming you have from what you've described.
It's interesting, hybrid working, because I think what's hopefully made us stand out a little bit in some of the awards that we've entered recently is that, unlike other organisations, that after a period of time after COVID, and I think there was some considerable time, but they've seen a bit of a return to the office, and we haven't. We remain a hybrid organisation, and we kind of believe our kind of offices are almost like resource centres, so we travel for purpose. There isn't anything, you know, such as the kind of traditional commute anymore. So when I used to be in the office, I would be there for 8:30 and I wouldn't dare leave before 4:30. Whereas now you travel when you've got your meetings and you might arrive mid-morning or afternoon. So I think what there is an understanding that with hybrid working came a greater level of flexibility that people have become to enjoy and now expect. So like you say, parents taking children to the school on the school run before they start school, before they start work, or maybe picking them up after school and leaving early. And I think, you know, we have to be mindful of that expectation and continue to provide the flexibility, because I think if we didn't, flexibility has become, in my mind, the number one differentiator as to what colleagues are looking for, as to whether they want to stay and join with an organisation.
Yeah, that's really valid. And I think you're right that things have moved us forward as a sector anyway in this space with remote working, and I can see improvements myself. And from my point of view, I think hybrid working allows you to almost be your best self. And as someone who's recently returned from maternity leave, it's been a bit of a godsend for me, and it means I can be my best self and do the job to the best that I can, where some days James has been up all night. And it's funny, I was watching a reel on Instagram the other day where it's like, working parents, you almost live 10 lifetimes before you even log on to work, and you've been up with your child all night, they've been ill,
It's been a full day's work before you start.
yeah, and you dial in at 9 o'clock and someone goes, "Are you okay?" And you go, "Yes, thanks, are you?" It's like, oh no, I'm not okay, like all this has happened. So I think the remote and hybrid piece is really key, but it's also that cultural piece behind it. Andrew, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Yeah, thank you. I think look, most of my workforce and most of my businesses are kind of remote operation for kind of out based field teams rather than people who drive keyboards. And I think in that environment, it's often more challenging to be flexible. And it's kind of why I put the challenging norms in, really. You know, it's not to say that everybody can have complete flexibility all of the time, but I think it's about challenging the norms to be as flexible as it is possible to be within the type of work that you are delivering. And actually, you know, there's benefit in that for our staff, and obviously, they benefit from as much flexibility as possible. But actually, if we are the most flexible person for the most flexible employer for that particular skill set, then actually there's a strategic advantage for us in terms of retention and attraction and all those sorts of things. So I think as flexible as it is physically possible to be is probably the strategy that I think works best.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Just had a couple of questions pop in that I think are really important ones around, and they're from people that are about to go off on maternity leave. I think someone saying they're due to have their first baby in March. Congratulations, it's very exciting. But will be the only parent in the team, and what conversations should they be having with your manager before you go on mat leave? And a similar one as well to say, about to go on maternity leave for the first time, what does a good conversation with the manager look like before you leave that sets out expectations? And the really important part of that question, and I think this is worth pulling out, is you put, I don't know what that will look like myself yet, and I think that is the key. I speak from my recent experience here. Before I went on mat leave, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted my mat leave to look like. I was like, I'm going to do a kit day every couple of weeks, and I'm going to be really involved and this, that, and the other. And I tried to really set out a plan. I'm quite a structured person. So this is exactly what I want it to look like. And then when I had my son, my perspective kind of shifted a bit. And I think my advice to anyone who's about to go off on mat leave is, don't put pressure on yourself to have certain conversations and set up a structure and decide what it will look like. Be honest with your employer that you don't know what you want yet, and just sort of try and enjoy that moment. I think kit days are amazing, and I definitely advise people do them. It made me feel in touch with the business. My colleagues were fantastic when I did them. I felt really supported. But make sure you're doing it for you and not to prove a point to yourself around, I can come back and I can do X, Y, Z. No, just soak up that time. Don't feel like you've got to commit. Don't feel like you've got to be the same version of you when you're back. Letty, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. So I was just scribbling some notes as soon as I saw that come in. There's a ton of things that you can do in terms of conversations that you have with your manager before you go off. I think one of the key ones is just really managing that handover. So handovers look different for every single business, every single team. Sometimes it can be that your role is being, for want of a better word, Frankensteined a little bit. So it might be that bits of your responsibilities are being handed across to other people, or it might indeed be that you're getting a mat cover. I'd strongly recommend, if you possibly can, getting some sort of crossover between when your maternity cover starts and before you go off. This is just because having an in-person or at least even remote phone calls, just chatting through what the role is like, is just super, super important. So if you're able to have that, great. If you're not, think of it as somebody really stepping into your shoes and take the time to write a proper handover document. If you want to get in touch direct, I don't mind sharing, just with the people who ask those questions, we've got a really comprehensive handover checklist, which is really the idiot's guide to, like, here are all the things that if you hit every single one of these things, you're going to have an absolute cracking handover. But it's also worth saying that they should do that in reverse for when you come back. So they should hand over at that level of detail to you when you come back. So the other thing is, set the precedent with your employer as to how you want to be contacted. Often employers and certainly managers think, oh, I thought I wasn't allowed to contact you when you're on maternity leave. That's absolutely not the case at all. There is no legal precedent. So as long as you're not hassling someone to come back as an employer, there's actually no, what good looks like. So this is your opportunity to be proactive and own how you want to be contacted. And it's okay to change your mind. So if you start off by saying, oh, I'd love you to WhatsApp me once a week, and then you think, oh my God, I don't want this at all. I definitely can't do this. I'm too sleep deprived for this. Then you just say, okay, no, I've changed my mind. You are allowed to change your mind. And I think Heidi alluded to that earlier, which is you just might not know what it looks like. In terms of kit days, I'd say be proactive with these. So Kit days are optional. They are your legal right. You have up to 10. They are fully paid, and even partial work on a kit day constitutes a full working day. But be proactive with them. Half the time, your manager won't actually know what a good kit day looks like. So do your research and think, actually, what do I want from this? Do I want to just sit in the room and just be there and just kind of, be a fly on the wall for a day or half a day? That'd be great. Bringing your baby to work for a coffee, sadly, not a kit day, but so it's worth also just remembering exactly what kind of vein a kit day should look like. But I definitely recommend being proactive with them, not reactive. And by the way, if you don't want to take a single kit day, you don't have to. They're optional. Often people think, oh, I have to use up my kit days. No, you don't. If you can't get the childcare or it doesn't work for you, then just don't take them. The other thing I would say is give 8 weeks to your workplace before letting them know of any working pattern that you want to change. You have the right to request flexible working, but just almost setting yourself a date in your calendar to start worrying, which I know sounds weird, but often people spend the whole of their maternity leave panicking about the return or worrying or building it up. And I always say to my clients and my coachees, set yourself a date to worry and say, okay, I can worry about it. I can start thinking about it at this date. But before then, I'm just going to really enjoy my parental leave. And then the last couple of points is you can use your accrued annual leave very creatively. So you will have annual leave that builds up. Sometimes I had a client the other day that built up 50 days of annual leave. So this is a lot. Use it creatively. So yes, you can take a block at the end of your mat leave. That tends to be how employers want the leave to be taken anyway. But if you want to test out, for example, working 4 days a week and just see what it's like for you, take an annual leave day once a week and see if it's possible, see whether you're able to do that. So really, really good way to use up your annual leave. And then just remind that manager that it takes time for you to re-onboard. It is like a new job. Working parenthood is worth 2.5 full-time jobs. So just being a stay-at-home mum is 2.5 full-time jobs. There are no weekends, there's no annual leave, it's 24 hours a day. So reminding your manager that it's going to be quite a lot for you to juggle when you're back, but you're up for the challenge, but it will just be patient and it will just take time to re-onboard you. And the next final piece of advice, sorry, I'm wittering on, but I hope this is all useful, is that get some overlap with your childcare. So at least 2 weeks. So before you come back, let's say you decided to have a nursery or a nanny or childminder, whatever it is, have 2 weeks before you go back where they're in the childcare and you get used to the logistics and the drop-offs. And if you haven't recalibrated the balance with your partner, make sure that you do this. So you write out every single parenting thing that you do at each day, preparing the lunches, speaking to the nursery, buying the clothes, all of the things that are in your brain make up working motherhood. You say to them, hi, I'm about to go back to work and add an actual job on top of my already 2.5 full-time jobs that I've been doing since I've been on maternity leave. I need us to recalibrate a bit. And it doesn't have to be 50-50, but it does have to be talked about. And having a solid partnership is what is going to make your maternity really, really good from your support system.
Thanks, Letty. Loads of really useful stuff in there. I'll probably be listening to the recording myself and getting some notes from that. So thank you. We've had another question. I might direct this one to Andrew, if that's all right, Andrew, because someone's asked if we hear that flexible working is more difficult to access for those in more operational sort of roles versus those working in like corporate centres. So would you have any advice on that?
So
I agree, it's more difficult. I think, when we are, deploying field resource, kind of resourcing models presume that you've got 37, 40 hours a week of, X number of people delivering a job in the field. It is more challenging. And, sometimes there are kind of red lines that actually are really difficult to get around. But I don't think I've looked at any of them where there wasn't something that we could do or something that we could change. So it's almost a bit of a politician's answer, really, because I don't think there's a panacea to it. But I think it's just a case of even if you workshop it, get some of the people involved who deliver the work, and actually what is the art of the possible, because it is very easy to decline and say no without fully exploiting every possible opportunity to see whether you can. I would be challenging ourselves to to do as much as we can, rather than just say, no, sorry, can't be done. It's a field delivery.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Absolutely spot on. Charlotte, from an E.ON perspective, yeah, you've got your hand up.
I've been looking for the raise the hand button and I can't find it, but yeah, no, I did want to come in there because I totally agree, Andrew, and I think, you know, we've obviously got areas of our business that it's far harder to introduce flexibility for than others, and the field is one of those where you've got a schedule of, you know, meter appointments that you need to make throughout the day, and we have to always be mindful of the customer first, but I think, yeah, we have one of our principles is we start with a yes and then we work backwards. So we do firmly believe that all roles can be flexible. It's just there's an element of how flexible they can be dependent on the work that they do. So it's really about how do you get creative. And, you know, we've looked at things like, you know, being able to slide a shift at short notice for somebody that's in a meter tech role. Actually, that's great flexibility. And it's that kind of, you know, well, I did it for you this time, you do it for me next time, right? Because that will help me. And you start to build some camaraderie and some kind of, you know, good culture and practice between the teams, and things like, you know, maybe working a little bit later, banking that time and then being able to take it as toil on a future day. So there are definitely options to consider, but I do agree that, you know, it's not as easy for all areas as others.
Brill. Thanks both. That was really helpful. Then just jump into the next question. I might go back to you, Letty, if that's okay. It's, do you have any advice for managers to ensure that career progression is not impacted by having time off work on maternity leave? They've given an example of setting realistic objectives for short years, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one that comes up a lot, actually. And you'd be amazed at how many businesses don't make any adjustment. And I think it's having a really, really good look at how your diversity or inclusion policies, or indeed just performance policies, all intertwine with each other, because often policies are developed in isolation and nobody really looks at the whole picture to say, actually, if we're trying to sort of say to everybody and sell the idea that we're really an inclusive employer, that doesn't really make sense if you've got a sales target that's based on, let's say, once a quarter and somebody hasn't been present for the whole quarter. So I think it's, and honestly, there are some really big companies who make absolutely no adjustment for that. So I think it's really important to try and look at, and obviously, sorry, this is quite generic advice because I don't know what where you work, but it's really looking at things from a common sense perspective and thinking and putting yourself truly in that person's shoes and saying, what is fair? What's fair? So if that person literally hasn't been there, for example, and it is a sales target, you could say, again, I'm using sales as the hypothesis, but it's okay, they haven't been here, they haven't been able to generate their sales, but can we give them a proportion of what they have on the basis of how they have performed since they've been back? And it's just applying, like sometimes when I'm doing training, I literally draw a common sense button like on a pad and I just press it, which is just like, think holistically about the person, how long they've had off, but also about your performance policies more generally, and how you can make them fair on the basis of whatever inclusion and maternity, paternity packages you have at the moment. So just try and look at all of the policies together as a whole and just check that they're all kind of knocking on each other properly, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question, but I put my email address down there. So if you want to get in touch direct and have a conversation, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you for that. Anything to add from an E.ON perspective, Charlotte, on that one?
Not really, no. I think your point about looking at other policies is important. So from a performance perspective, we'd also encourage managers to consider the previous year's performance. So if that was somebody that had previously been an exceptional exceeding person, then, you know, we should take that into consideration as opposed to just giving a blanket on target performance rating. And I think as well, if you've got people that are part of talent development networks, have a conversation. They might still want to take part in some of those modules or pieces of learning that are happening over the maternity leave. So it's that, you know, contracting again before somebody goes off, and not assuming that because they're about to take a period of maternity leave that they'll want to take a bit of a career break, if you like, from that development network. They might not. They might actually find that it really helps them. So it's just, yeah, the kind of two things together.
Thank you. That's really helpful as well. I've had an anonymous question, which I think is a really poignant one. is that not everybody has a positive experience of early parenthood or maternity leave, and how can we support people who have had or are still probably struggling with postnatal depression? I'm assuming, Letty, you've probably had many conversations with women who are feeling this. What's your key takeaway?
Really look at your nests. So the first one is that depending on how long you've felt like this, it's really, really important that you raise this with your GP. So if it's within the first 2 years of having a baby, depending on the clinical trust that you're in, you're probably still eligible for perinatal mental health support. So check on this and make sure that you access that help directly. But if it's just a case of getting through the day until that's happened, until you've accessed that support, really look at your nests. So that is the principle that you need a strong and secure nest to be able to take care of your chicks and babies. And it's an acronym. It stands for your nutrition. So rate yourself out of 1 to 5. So compared to how you are now versus how you were before you had children, how do you feel like you're feeding yourself? Because if you're not putting good fuel in the tank, the car's not going to run well, if that makes sense. Your exercise and your physical health. So if you've got tricky birth injuries that haven't healed, this can all have a really big impact on our resilience and our mental health. So looking at your physical health, making sure that you've accessed some postnatal physio if you can get this through your GP. But actually, there are some really reasonable private physios that can do this for less than £100 as well. So I know it's not super cheap, but it's worth it for your well-being, having a look for that as well. But also exercise just for mental well-being. The endorphins that you get from exercise is really, really important. The other thing I'd say is your sleep. So if you are really struggling with sleep deprivation, my child didn't sleep for 2.5 years. It nearly finished me. I'm not joking. Like, we joke about it, but it is so bad, and it's used as a torture technique in Guantanamo Bay. Okay, so like this, and by the way, and so is the sound of babies crying. So do not underestimate the impact that this has on your mental health if you're sleep deprived. And if it's very, very bad, again, if you scored yourself out of 5 and you're scoring a 0 or a 1, get some help. There is help out there. I've got a great person I can send your way. And also I've got some sleep advice myself, so you can get back in touch, because that ain't my first rodeo. I've ridden that many times. The fourth one is time for self. So if you're finding that, let's say your partner is going out to the gym a couple of nights a week and you're still at home all day, every day with the baby, look into that and look at, okay, is the time that we have for ourselves, as in, if my partner's managing to get out 2 or 3 times a week, okay, how am I managing to get out 2 or 3 times a week? And really looking at that split in your life, just to make sure that you are getting that sense of identity back, because that is going to help you feel a lot more positive from a mental well-being perspective. And then finally, it's looking at your support. So we've gone nutrition, exercise, sleep, time for self, and support. So it's looking at, what's your support system like? Is your partner, have you done that recalibration exercise? Have you sat down and looked at the split of the mental home workload of what happens at home to make sure that it's split properly? What is your childcare provider like? Do you feel supported by them to be able to go and do your job without them bombarding you with emails 80 times a day? Also, who does a childcare provider contact? Because 9 times out of 10, they just default call whoever is the female name on that list. And I'm sorry to say it, it's not an incorrect generalization, because I get this feedback from clients all the time, where even when the dad is listed as the first name contact, they will still call the mum. And I actually don't think that's fair on the dads either. So, it's really worth looking at that whole support process more holistically, and just making sure that you are happy with the support that you've got around you, and looking at your friends as well. So dropping out from the friendships that drain you, maybe those who don't have children, who aren't understanding your situation, and nurturing those that do feed you and feed your soul is really worthwhile. And of course, by the way, shameless plug, but obviously I do this directly with parents as well. So if you need support more directly, you can always get back in touch, because I have that as an arm of the business. But I can't really do that without doing shameless plugs. But there we go.
Thanks, Letty. That's really helpful. I think finding your tribe was going to be my top tip on that, and you've actually touched on it there, both in work and out of it. I think it's really powerful. thank you all for amazing discussion. I'm just conscious we've only got 3 minutes left, and I just wanted to share with everyone how they can give some feedback on this event via a QR code, if that's okay. Hopefully my screen actually works this time. Really appreciate the panel's discussion here. Thank you so much to all our amazing panelists who actually live and breathe this every day. I know the absolute experts in this field, so thank you so much for that. Thank you for joining the call, everyone. Please do take note of this QR code and feel free to share your feedback. We'd absolutely love to hear it, and we're interested in putting on more of these events, etc. So please do keep in touch with us and let us know what you think. And please check out all things WUN on the website. This is one of many, many events, and hopefully you'll join a few more after this one. So thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate it.